Good evening, everyone. Welcome and thanks for joining us for our final lockdown Q&A in our 2021 series. And we end with someone who is arguably the best fast bowler ever to have played Test cricket, the one and only Michael Holding. Mikey is joining us from the Cayman Islands, where it's just turned midday. Thanks also to Chris English, who has helped to set up today's Q&A. Chris will shortly provide a more detailed introduction to our guest. We will then take questions from Andrew Loughtit and Lionel Frumpkin. So would Andrew and Lionel please be ready to put their questions to Mikey when Chris has finished. Please would you all make sure your microphones are muted unless you're asking a question. You may be unmuted just before it's your turn to ask a question. So if so, please do try and avoid any background noise. Now we may have time for a couple of additional questions tonight. So if you want to join in, please use the chat facility and outline your questions either to me or to one of my two co-hosts, Paul Graber and Stuart Lewis. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you, James. Well, since we're all on different time zones, I will say good day. But I have to start by saying, sadly, I did not see much of Mikey's career live, as I was in Zambia and then California for pretty much all of it, unfortunately. But after watching highlights of that over in Bridgetown in 1981, I was convinced that I had seen the best of the best, but I'm sure we're going to hear more of that over a bit later on. I was, however, in Barbados and Antigua for the '86 series, and notably the 5th test in Antigua, remembered for Gypsy's Calypso, Captain the Ship is Sinking, Viv's 100 in the second innings of 56 balls, and of course, Far Too Much Rum. However, I also remember the first innings, and not so much for Desi Haynes' 131, but Mikey's 73, including 4 sixes, one of which sailed way out of the ground over Independence Avenue and clattered into the wall of St. Joseph's St. Patrick's Church. Mikey, I believe you still hold the record for most sixes in a test career for any player with fewer than 1,000 runs. My memory is dim, I'm getting old like a lot of us, but I think I first met Mikey on a visit to St. Kitts, one I made in the late 90s before I even moved there. I was invited to an evening to celebrate, I think it was Courtney Walsh, arranged by a long-term resident from Jamaica that Mikey of course knows well. And he had invited Mikey and in fact Franklin Rose too. In fact, at home, I still have the invitation of that evening and being starstruck, signed by the 3 Jamaican test bowlers. But at that event, a mutual friend introduced us, and Mikey, as ever, the personable gentleman that he is, was happy to engage in a conversation. Frankly, I think he was either surprised or perhaps pleased that this English guy living in California, visiting St. Kitts, volunteered that his favorite batsman was also Jamaica, one Lawrence Rowe. Anyway, Mikey and I, we've remained in touch ever since, and of course, we now have many mutual friends these days, particularly as I'm now entrenched in St. Kitts, as most of you know. I also had the pleasure of working alongside Mikey's wife, Lorianne, when I was operations chair for the World Cup in St. Kitts in 2007. These days, we all keep in touch more virtually than in person, although he has managed to make a couple of visits to St. Kitts in his role as a commentator. But we do usually manage to connect at Lord's in an English summer. So Mikey, welcome, and thank you for doing this. We are delighted to have you with us, of course, and as the Indians say, cello, cello. So over to you, James.
Thank you. Well, our first question was going to come from Andrew Loughtit, who was in the waiting room, but appears to have disappeared. So Lionel, would you like to put your question to Mikey? And we hope that Andrew will turn up again soon.
Yeah, certainly. Good evening, Michael, and thanks for joining us. And also hi to Chris in California.
Hi, Chris.
My question is, many of you will remember your famous over against Brian Close at Old Trafford in 1976. But were you just warming up to have a go at Jeff Boycott in Barbados in 1981? Please tell us your memories of those 2 overs.
Well, Lionel, to be honest,
It was a bit more than an over to Brian Close, because I think Brian Close lasted quite a bit longer at the crease than Jeffrey Boycott did. Brian Close actually lasted the entire evening that evening. It wasn't a very long period of time that we were bowling that evening, because he batted first and he came back the next morning. Jeffrey didn't last that long. But Brian Close, as everyone knows, was always a very tough man. Not that Jeffrey Boycott wasn't, but I remember a few balls flying past Close's head, couple of balls hitting him in the rib cage, and he just stood there. And as I said, he lasted out the entire evening and came back the next morning. The one over now to Jeffrey Boycott, that's a different matter. But as we know, Jeffrey Boycott is always trying to put the limelight on himself and place himself in the spotlight. And he said if it hadn't been for him facing, England would have lost quite a few more wickets than just the one. You know, people keep on talking about that over, and yes, you know, I remember bowling the over, but I think I've bowled better overs than that at other times. But when you get rid of Jeffrey Boycott, especially in that manner, it will have a lasting memory.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Our next question then, so Andrew still hasn't turned up, will be from Peter Hart. Peter. Peter, you need to unmute yourself.
Mike, thanks so much for joining us this evening. It's lovely to see you. I also go back to 1976 and Tony Greig. I remember, and I've got it in front of me, his comment at Hove at the beginning of the season. I won't read it in full, but just to give a bit of it. He said, sure, they got a couple of fast bowlers, but really, I don't think we're going to run into anything any more sensational than Thompson and Lilly. So I'm really not all that worried about them. You must remember that the West Indians, these guys, if they get on top, they're magnificent cricketers. But if they're down, they grovel. And I intend, with the help of Closey and a few others, to make them grovel. Now, obviously, in that series, the West Indies won 3-0. And at the Oval, I was there as a 10-year-old, and you got 14 wickets in the match. And Tony Greig did grovel on the outfield pantomime fashion, didn't he, in front of the crowd. But after that tour, you were offered a university scholarship, but Clive Lloyd sort of talked to you, and you both went to World Series cricket, where you would have seen a lot of Tony Greig and played with him a lot. Yeah. So I'd like to ask you what your relationship was with Tony Greig. I mean, did you have mutual respect, and how was that comment perceived with the West Indian team at the time? I mean, did it galvanise you just to sort of really prove a point that you were a formidable team like the Australians had been? So fascinating memories, and I'll leave that there. Thank you.
I'll start on the groveling comment first of all, Peter, because I saw that live. When touring teams toured England in the 70s, they didn't play cricket on a Sunday. And the Sunday League was on, and they were down at Sussex. Cameras went and interviewed Greggy, and he made that comment. I think only about 5 of us in the team saw it live, because we didn't have television sets in our rooms those days. We had to go down to the lobby, and thankfully it was on the cricket. And those of us who saw it live made the rest of the team aware of the comment. And we were adamant that we were going to stuff that comment back down Greggy's throat. And I think we pretty much did that through that summer. But as you said, I worked with Greggy for many years, played with him with World Series cricket, worked with him for many years as a commentator. And I grew to know Tony Greig and to respect and like Tony Greig. I had an excellent relationship with him and his family, his second family, that is, because as you know, he got married twice, and with his second wife in Aussie, we had an excellent relationship. But when you make the point about the scholarship, yes, definitely, I got a scholarship from the Prime Minister of Jamaica in 1976 to go to University of the West Indies, and I was glad to go because I wasn't intending to be a professional cricketer, and there wasn't a lot of money in the game then. But then when Packer came along, it changed the entire landscape, because when I went to Australia 75, 76 with the West Indies, my fee for that tour was $600 US. And a year and a bit later, Kerry Packer came and offered 25,000 Australian dollars for the same thing. So I think it was pretty obvious that whoever he wanted, he would have gotten. So I went on that tour because I didn't intend to be a professional cricketer until that sort of money came into the game.
Thank you so much. That was a fantastic answer.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Peter.
Mikey.
Thank you, Mikey. Right, we've got 3 related questions now. So, Mikey, if it's all right with you, I'll ask all 3 to ask their questions before you come in and give your answers. So, first one is from John Fingleton. Fingers, do you want to ask your question, please?
I'd be delighted to. Thank you very much, Mike. Good evening and welcome, I think, to our first pan-continental gathering. I think to cover California, the West Indies and the UK is a remarkable achievement, and I'm sure it's going to be even more fun than the one you're doing at headquarters next week. You rather gained on me because I had written my question before events caught up with me, because my original question was, do you believe that the TV discussion you had with Ebony Rainford-Brent during a rain break last year helped or hindered the cause of racial integration, either in sport or in life generally? And then, of course, yesterday and the day before, Sky had another program and a much longer discussion. So it's the same question, but it's covered in more depth now by Sky.
Thank you, John. And Danny Flowers, a fellow West Indian, I believe. Danny, would you like to ask your question?
And speaking from Portugal.
Oh, okay.
Mike, everywhere.
Mike, what I'd like to ask you is that, do you believe that what would MCC and the World Body of Cricket do to improve after your comments about the knee? What would they do to improve their racial relationship after your comments about the knee?
Thanks, Danny. And finally, Chris, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, thanks. So, Mikey, while your book, No Holding Back, focused on your cricket career and transitioned into the commentary box, I think that your third and new book that isn't out yet, Why We Kneel, How We Rise, is different. I believe this found its genesis in your moving speech about racism at the rain delay in the test last summer, and the outpouring that you've received from many of the world's most iconic sportswomen and men. I think you've said that no one is asking for history to be edited. It's already been edited to suit a particular narrative. We need the unedited version. So is your new book part of the unedited version? And to add to Finger's question, and basically on integration, and Danny's on taking the knee and the power off there, to what extent do you see racism remaining in the game in the UK and indeed across the world? And do you continue to see a reluctance to face up to it?
Oh, that's a lot there. Let me see if I can encapsulate all that in my response. Well, as far as the program that we did, the video that we did last year, Ebony and myself, John was asking me if I think it did good or it did harm. I would think it did good. I would think it did a lot of good, because I got so many responses from people around the world who agreed with the comments and were hoping that those comments would then get people to start thinking and to start acting differently. Because as I said on that video, and as I've said on many occasions after that, a lot of people are really unaware of the true history of the world. A lot of people are also very unaware that they have racist tendencies and think some racist thoughts, because it's just the way that they are brought up, the way that they grow, the way the society in which they live doesn't make them think or know that they're having racist thoughts or doing racist things. I give the example of that lady in Central Park in New York, who immediately, when she was asked by a black man to put her dog, thinking of horses, put her dog on a leash, her immediate reaction was, no black man should be telling me this. I am just going to call the police. The police is going to turn up. They'll be white. I am white. They're going to immediately think I am right and that black guy is wrong, because of the society in which she grew. It was automatic. It was something embedded in her mind. And there are a lot of people like that. I go also to the example I gave about the 135 school teachers who were put in a room in the US. This is a Yale study. This is not some study done by some Mickey Mouse organization. This is a Yale University study. And they were told, I'm going to be showing you a video. Look out for bad behavior. Immediately, the video started. They had eye tracking technologies on the teachers, 135 of them. Immediately, the video started. their eyes went to the black kids, because subconsciously, that is the way they are brought up. If there's trouble, it's going to be the black kids. Those teachers were not racist per se. They were not bad people. As we found out when they were told the results, one of the 135 was embarrassed, one was not embarrassed rather, and did not want the results published. The other 134 say, yes, publish the results so that people are aware that these things are happening subconsciously, and we're not even aware of it. So it's not that people, basically, everyone that is, are racist and always have racist thoughts, but subconsciously, because of the world in which they grow and because of what's the word? Because of the fact that they're always told that this is the way the world is. They just think that way. So if what we said, if when my book comes out, people read it and understand the history of mankind, if I'm absolutely sure that will change some people's thought processes and some people's minds, because I already know it has done so for some people. One person responded to me apologizing, as a matter of fact, that they were unaware that these things were happening in the world because they just saw it and thought that's just the way the world is. He said to me he was not even aware of being not prejudiced against, because he said as a white person he has never experienced racism, he has never experienced prejudice, but he didn't try to put himself in anyone else's shoes to understand exactly what it meant. He now has found out, he has recognized it, and he basically has changed his entire thought process and the entire way that he looks at people. What my book is trying to do, as I said, is to educate. The fact that history was edited, this is not a fallacy, this is a fact, that history was edited to suit a particular narrative. A lot of things were not taught in history. When I made the example of the light bulb and the black man who invented the carbon filament, that is fact. That is not something that I made up or someone else made up. In my book, I've listed a whole ton of black achievements and black achievers that have been airbrushed out of history because it didn't fit the narrative of white superiority. The man who invented the three-way traffic light is a black man. No one knows about that. There are so many black inventions and great black people that were airbrushed out of history because to make sure that the black man stays in his place, as they put it. If you have icons, if you have idols, if you have role models that are black, kids will easily say to themselves, I want to be like such and such. If there are none, if all they see and hear about are people from other races that have created things, have done great things, they will think to themselves, the position that I have, this is where I am. I cannot aspire to be great because there is nobody before me that was great. And that is what my book is trying to do. And when my book comes out, people can go and read it. They can do their own research and see that it's not fallacy, it's fact, that the history has been changed to suit a certain narrative. And that is what I was saying about the comment that Mr. Boris Johnson made, that we can't go back and edit history. It has already been edited. We need the real, full, true history so that everyone can know the history of why racism started, how it started, and why it continues. And until we do that, we're going to struggle.
James?
Thank you. Danny, do you want to come back in there?
Yes, Mike, I want to know what you think we can do to change the MCC and English cricket to be less racist and to have black people in their management structures where you will see none at all.
Daniel, I don't worry about the MCC and cricket or football or whatever and having black people in positions. Because if you're going to put people in positions just to put them in a position. I don't care about that. That is doing absolutely no good. Those who read my book will know exactly where I stand when it comes to quota systems that goes on in South Africa. I am totally against that. People must earn their positions, but you must have equal opportunity. And as I've said about various sports, what can this sport do? What can that sport do? I don't want to get involved with a sport and tell them what to do. The society needs to be fixed. If the society is fixed, it's the same society that turn up to watch games, the same society that turn up to playing games, the same society that are involved in administration. So if you do not fix the society, you're going nowhere. Last November, I read a story about football in England, that there were over 100 non-white footballers who have represented England. Over 100 of them. What has happened with football in England? You still have people being abused. You still have the racial abuse of footballers because the society has not been fixed. If you don't fix the society, we're going nowhere, Daniel.
Thank you very much. Very good point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so Andrew's finally joined us. Andrew, welcome. And would you like to ask your question, please?
Hello, and I'm sorry that I had a Wi-Fi problem, but I'm here. Good day, Michael.
Hi, good day, Andrew.
In May 1976, I took a friend who was born in Grenada to see the West Indian side, which was playing the MCC at Lord's. We sat on the pavilion balcony behind the bowler's arm, and my friend was really thrilled and excited with the sense of occasion on this, his first visit to Lord's. Sometime later, I noticed that tears were streaming down his face, so I inquired what the problem was. He explained that there were tears of joy, the joy of watching the young Michael Holding in only what I think was his second game in England, bowling fast and bowling at Lord's. He said that when he was a young boy, this is exactly what he and his friends in Grenada had dreamt about. Michael, does this story strike a chord with you? And what are your memories of your ambitions as a young boy in Jamaica?
Andrew, to be honest, as I've said it to many people, as a young man growing up in Jamaica, I never dreamt of playing cricket for the West Indies or dreamt of going to Lords or anything like that. I just played sports because I loved sports. I played cricket. I represented my school at cricket. I represented my school at football. I represented my school at athletics. I played table tennis. When I was at school, I was good enough to represent the school at table tennis. But as a young man growing up in Jamaica, I just played because I enjoyed it. Even when I got selected to play for the West Indies the very first time in 75, 76, I was not elated. You know, I've told this story before. When I was told those days, you got the message on the radio or somebody would hear it on the radio and come and tell you. It was a friend of mine who came to my club at Melbourne Cricket Club to tell me that he heard on the radio that I had been selected to go to Australia with the West Indies team. And I was sad because immediately in my mind, the thought that came to my mind was that I was going to be away from my family for Christmas. Because Christmas in the Caribbean, and it's a big family thing. We go to early morning service at church, we come back, we have breakfast. We're not even allowed to open Christmas presents until all that ritual has been done. And then we even have to go and collect presents from under the tree to go and give our aunts and our uncles and our cousins before you even get a chance to open yours. But it's a great family gathering, a great family event. And I was going to miss that. And that's the first thought that came to my mind because I was only 21. I was a very young man, 21 years old. And that's the first thought that came to my mind. Playing cricket for the West Indies those days, there was no money in the game. So it was not a matter of me saying, oh, I might be a professional cricketer. I might make some good money playing. Nothing like that. My first tour to Australia, I got $600 US. So I was not aspiring to be a great West Indies cricketer or to be a West Indies cricketer. But as time went on and things changed, and especially with Kerry Packer coming into the game and bringing more money into the game, that gave me a better opportunity and better reason to go and play cricket. But as we said earlier on, I'm not sure if you were on and listening, I got a scholarship to go to the University of the West Indies the end of 1976 to England, and I took it, I went. I was away for 4 years. I would have been away for 4 years, but for Packer. I didn't intend to be a cricketer.
If I might just butt in here a little bit, Mikey, I'm assuming modesty prevailed and why you haven't told us about your high school high jump records.
Well, as I said, Chris, I represented my school at different things, you know, cricket, football, athletics. I still have a high school record that has been going now, what, 57 years. But at the same time, it is difficult for anyone to break it, Chris, because they don't go to high school at that young anymore. I went to high school when I was just barely 10. So at that age, you know, you don't have too many people going to high school at 10 these days. It's difficult for anyone to break the record. Almost impossible.
Thanks, Mikey. And thank you, Andrew. It was worth waiting for. That was an excellent question. I'm glad you were able to join us in the end. So our next question comes from Max Sawyer. Max.
Hello, Michael.
Hi, Max. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much. What are the problems, as you see it, facing West Indies cricket at the moment, and are they being properly addressed?
One of the biggest problems facing West Indies cricket is finances, Max. You know, as you know, there are so many 2020 tournaments going on around the world these days, and all of them pay a lot more money than any of the West Indies cricketers could get from the West Indies Cricket Board. So that's their first priority. And I'm not going to blame anyone for that. I'm not going to blame the West Indies cricketers for that, because cricket is a very short career. And at the end of your career, a lot of cricketers, as we have seen, struggle. Michael Atherton wrote an article. Was it an article? Yes, I think it was just an article about the number of cricketers who committed suicide when their cricket careers came to an end. So it is a serious problem. So I would never try to tell any West Indian cricketer who can hardly get too much money from West Indies Cricket Board not to go on in these 2020 tournaments. And I think that is the most serious problem that West Indies cricket faces. We have had a lot of great cricketers in the past who stuck with the West Indies because there was no option. You had no choice. A lot of them went and played county cricket to try and supplement their earnings. But there was no option of playing anything else. These cricketers have an option. Past administration, just past administration, exacerbated that problem with their attitude towards the cricketers. And the cricketers said, okay, I have a choice. You don't want to be accommodating to me in any way. Your attitude is take it or leave it. I will leave it. This current administration, I think, is a lot more open to negotiation and to discussion. And as we see, a lot of the guys who disappeared from West Indies cricket and just only played 2020 tournaments around the world are now playing for the West Indies again. But again, sparingly, because they are not going to give up all those tournaments to play for the West Indies all the time. If we had a better way of making money in the Caribbean or getting sponsorship in the Caribbean so that the cricketers could be paid a better retainer contract, I'm absolutely sure we would get a lot more guys playing for the West Indies. And that is what we need. We cannot have a population of 5 million and keep on losing our best to different tournaments all around the world. We only have 5 million. You know, there's constant migration out to the Caribbean. So that 5 million never changes. And that's not a big pool from which to draw from. And when the best is being plucked by other nations with their domestic tournaments, we'll struggle.
Thank you, Mikey. Thank you, Max. So next question then from Noel Kearns. Noel.
Thank you, James. And hello, Chris.
Hey, Noel.
Hi, Mikey.
Hi, Noel.
Lovely to see you here.
Thank you.
Since we're talking about around the world, I'm speaking from a place called Godmanchester, which is about 20 odd minutes down the road from Newmarket.
Yes, I pass it on a frequent.
Junction 24, yes. Anyway, what I wanted to talk to you about was less about cricket, but more about Jamaica.
Okay.
Now, first of all, the program that Athos did with you when you went to visit 2 or 3 years ago, that's magnificent. I watched it more than once to make sure I could get all the bits and pieces out of it and really enjoyed that. Now, I'm picturing you, you know, as a young man, all the things, you know, sports nut, a lot of us wanted to do all those things at school and play cricket, soccer, tennis, table tennis, all the things that you said. I'm no good at high jump. I'm a little short ass. But however, it struck me that you're only 8 or 9 years younger than Bob Marley. And you know, I'm thinking of Bob Marley, Pete Tosh, Bunny Wailer. I was wondering whether you ever, you know, because you would have been celebrities within Jamaica at crossing and a crossover stage. Did you ever spend time with them? Did you get to know them? Did you go to Trenchtown? So that's just talk about Jamaica, even if it's a no. And the second part is for Dave Humphreys, one of our friends from the group that's not asking the question. He's going to the West Indies in the March, and he wants you to please get the board to get one of the tests in Jamaica so that it can match it with it. Can you do something for him?
That's going to be difficult. I think all the test matches and any cricket in the Caribbean now depends a lot on the state of the island when it comes to COVID, because they have just recently had to move one tour from one island to another because of the problems that they're having with COVID in the island that they had planned to have the cricket matches. Jamaica, growing up in Jamaica with people like Bob Marley and Peter Tosh and Dennis Brown and so many great artists around Jamaica at the same time I was growing up. I never got to actually meet any of them, to be honest. I met some of the lesser lights. There was a guy called King Stitch. Perhaps you never heard of him. I got to meet King Stitch because he came to my house with a young man that was visiting my sister. That young man worked for Dynamic Sound, which was the recording artist that King Stitch was associated with. The closest I got to Bob Marley was actually in traffic in Jamaica. We stopped at Halfway Tree. Don't know anyone that's familiar with Jamaica. There's a big clock tower there on traffic lights. And I stopped there, I pulled up at the traffic light and stopped. And out of the corner of my eye, in the peripheral vision, I saw a blue BMW coming up and beside me. And of course, those days, we didn't have a lot of air-conditioned vehicles. So all our windows were down. And I saw this blue BMW coming up beside me. And as it stopped beside me, I just instinctively looked to my left. And in the blue BMW was Bob Marley, because he drove a BMW. Everybody said the BMW was Bob Marley and the Wailers. And he looked instinctively to his right at the same time, and we looked at each other. And I said to myself, oh, hell, that's Bob Marley. So I nodded to him, and with him looking at me, he nodded to me as well. And then the lights changed and we moved off. And that's I came to Bob Marley. I saw him, of course, live other places, but the closest physically was beside each other in the traffic in Jamaica.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Mikey. Good luck.
Thank you, Noel.
Thank you, Noel. That was great. Okay, the next question, please, from Simon Doff. Simon.
Hi, good evening, Michael. I've got a question about preparation for Test match cricket. One of my concerns is with the amount of sort of 2020 cricket. Test match players no longer have the time to prepare properly. And I wondered, when you were playing, okay, it was a period when there wasn't 2020 cricket, but if you were preparing for a home series in the West Indies, how many warm-up games did you need so that you could be at your best, you know, for that first test? And then how many warm-up games did you want when you toured Australia or toured England so you could acclimatise to local conditions and be ready for your best at that first test match?
Well, tours in the Caribbean were always going to be different from when we went overseas, because in the Caribbean, you'd be playing domestic cricket before the test series started, and you might play 1 or 2 games for your respective island in the domestic tournament before the test series started, because they pretty much ran side by side. When we went on tour now overseas, we would arrive in England, for instance. My first tour to England, 76. I think we arrived in England the 3rd or 4th of May. We did not play a test match until June. And all that time leading up to the first test match, we were playing counties. Each tour that we went to England, we'd play at least 19 or 20 county matches. Some counties would play them twice throughout the entire summer. And leading up to the first test match, quite a few, because it was a matter of getting acclimatized to the conditions. Some of the guys played county cricket, yes, but there were a few who did not. And it was a matter of getting acclimatized and building up to a test match. But those days, as you said, Simon, are distant. These days, people turn up in the country a week before the first test and they play the test series and they go home, which is a totally different scenario because of the amount of cricket that they are playing. You hear cricketers today talking about, oh, I want this tour off. And even the respective boards are doing it, giving them tours off and giving them matches within a tour. I'm sure you heard of the fiasco recently with the India-Sri Lanka tour when England went down there and they sent home one man and they did want him to come back. And he said, no, well, give him permission to go home, won't call any names and all that. But it creates problems because of the amount of cricket that is being played. The 2020 has not helped, just clogged up the itinerary even more, but the administrators seem to want it. It seems to me that they prefer anything that will bring money in instead of anything that improves the game. I've had that argument for years. They give a lot of lip service to Test cricket being the #1 version of the game, they keep on saying, but what do they do to keep Test cricket #1? Nothing. I'm coming up to England very shortly. There are 2 test matches starting, one the 2nd of June. The last second test match ends the 14th of June. And then there's no test cricket between the 14th of June and August when India come to England. So the best months, which are supposedly the summer months and the bright, sunny, warm period of the summer, is being dedicated to 2020 and one day and 50-over cricket and all, not test cricket. But yet they tell you we want to preserve test cricket as the #1 format of the game. All talk, no action.
Thank you.
And here. I mean, Mikey, a lot of us feel exactly the same. I'm entirely with you. I'm no fan of T20, and I do fear it is destroying Test cricket, which is the form of the game that most of us love so much. Anyway, right, the next question then is from Peter Richardson. Peter.
Good evening, Mikey. Much appreciated you giving your time this evening. That's great. Thank you. My question relates to childhood sporting heroes, which you've alluded to in a couple of your answers. Growing up, many of us had sporting heroes, people who you admired and tried to imitate, no matter how poorly. My 2 heroes unfortunately died tragically very young. In football, as a West Ham fan, mine was the great Bobby Moore. He was class personified. But in cricket, someone that got me into cricket as an Essex fan was the wonderfully gifted and athletic Barbadian all-rounder Keith Boyce, who was one of the most exciting and successful inputs in our domestic game. He bowled fast with a terrific smooth run-up and action. I don't know if there's any other cricketers like that, Mikey. An explosive hitter and a wonderful fielder with a terrific exocet throw. He was one of those cricketers who emptied bars. He was primarily a one-day player, but he had a short but successful test career, 21 tests in 5 years. I believe his last test series was a comprehensive away defeat via Australia in 75-76, which I believe was your first series. But I presume you played against him in the Shell Shield. Couple of questions. What are your memories of playing with and against him? Do you have similar memories of him as a player? And who were your sporting heroes? Any surprises there? Thank you.
Hi, Peter. I'll give you one of my early sporting heroes, which I know will surprise a lot of people. We used to get the English football on a Sunday in Jamaica on television when we first started getting television in the 60s. And one of my earliest sporting heroes was Jimmy Greaves. I actually got to meet him one day and I couldn't believe it. I was sitting beside him and I said to him, "You, sir, were one of my sporting heroes. I admired you as a footballer." And he said to me, no, you are my sporting hero. The humble man that he is, but believe me, I worshipped Jimmy Greaves. As for having a cricketing sporting hero, I didn't have a cricketing sporting hero as a young man. But when I started getting to the point where I could start playing for Jamaica and understanding what cricket at that level was like, my sporting hero was Lawrence George Rowe. Chris will identify with that man. He could bat. I used to watch Lawrence George Rowe 73, 74, 75 in the early days of me being associated with the West Indies team and the Jamaica team. And I've said to people, I cannot remember watching Lawrence George Rowe bat in those early 70s and see him play at a ball and miss. One of my biggest regrets is missing him scoring that 302 runs in Barbados. I was playing in a Shell Shield game, as it was called then, in Guyana, traveling on my way back home from Guyana to Jamaica, because as I said before, the test series and the domestic cricket were intertwined. And I asked the manager permission to come off the flight from Jamaica, from Barbados, from Guyana to Jamaica in Barbados. And he said, absolutely no way. What am I going to tell your mother when I get to Jamaica? And I regret that from then until now. So those are my two sporting heroes. Early days with Jimmy Greaves, and then latter days with Lawrence Rowe. As for Keith Boyce, I toured with Keith Boyce in 1975-76, and we got on immediately. Boyce pretty much took me under his wing. He wasn't the only one, but Boyce took me under his wing on so many occasions and took me out in different places. But Boyce never ever called me Mikey. Boyce would call me Holds, H-O-L-D-S. Come on, Holds, we're doing this Holds, we're doing that Holds. And Boyce, as you said, gave everything every time he went out onto the cricket field. Great competitor. Fast bowler. I used to watch him running in and those knees pumping up, and he strode in and really gave everything. When he delivered the ball, from his waist to his head was parallel to the pitch, the effort and the follow through that he had. I can tell everything about Boyce because I stuck with him down in Australia. I can give you a joke about that as well. Not really a joke. People will laugh, but Boyce took it very seriously. A lot of people don't even know this. When we played that second test match, we lost the first test match in Brisbane, went to the second test match in Perth, and we dropped Gordon Greenidge. Gordon Greenidge made nothing in Brisbane. They dropped Gordon Greenidge and they selected one opener for that test match in Perth. And they did not have a meeting to say, okay, Roy Fredericks is the opener with such and such. It was never discussed. When we bowled first, it was fine. When it was time for us to bat, we had 10 minutes in between innings. And Roy Fredericks, we got back to the dressing room. Roy Fredericks was padding up. Obviously, he's the opener. And nobody was padding up with Roy Fredericks because it was not discussed who was opening with Roy Fredericks. So everybody was saying, oh, I'll do it. And some people that should not even have opened their mouths said that they will go and open. And with Lillian Thompson and those quick bowlers, Keith Boyce put his hand up and said, Skipper, I will open. And started putting his pads on because that's Boyce. And the assistant manager, Keith Walcott, brother of Sir Clyde Walcott, Clyde Walcott, later Sir Clyde Walcott, in his Barbados drawl that I can't do very well, but Keith Walcott said, Keith Boyce, open for the West Indies? That would be a disgrace. And Boyce lost it. He got so upset for Keith Walcott to be suggesting that it would be a disgrace for Keith Boyce to open the batting for the West Indies. So nobody even knows about that. I've never written about it. I never mentioned it publicly. But talking about Boyce, no, I had a great time with him. Limited, unfortunately, he died so young, but he was a good man.
That is a fabulous answer. Thank you, Mikey. Thank you. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
Yes, it was. And thank you, Peter, for asking the question. That was fantastic. Well, our next question was put by Simon Heald, but unfortunately, Simon can't be with us. So I'm going to ask my co-host, Stuart Lewis, to ask a question on his behalf. Stuart.
Thanks, James. It's a change of tack, Mikey. Your love of horse racing in Newmarket has been touched on before. Simon's two questions were about that specifically. So okay. Simon said, we gather you spend time every summer when you're in the UK around the gallops at Newmarket, Sir Michael Stout's horses. Have you learned anything from Sir Michael's training methods that could be used for a cricket team or squad? And while you're thinking about that, his follow-up question was, would you get more pleasure taking a 5-wicket test haul or seeing your horse winning?
I'll answer the last one first. See my horse win. I have had a few horses at various times, mainly in Jamaica, and they have given me immense pleasure whenever they have passed the post in front. going back to Sir Michael and learning from him that could be applied to cricket. It's a little bit more difficult to apply what I learned from Sir Michael to cricket because he is a very patient man. Sir Michael doesn't push his horses. He allows them to develop naturally, slowly, if it takes time. And it's, these days, especially with the amount of cricket that is being played now, it is so difficult. You know, if a cricketer goes into a team, he's expected to perform immediately. If he doesn't perform immediately, you're talk about him being replaced. So it's a little bit more difficult to show that sort of patience. I would think years gone by, 2 decades ago, it was a lot easier to show that sort of patience because I know a lot of cricketers that selectors saw and thought, yes, he has a future. And they gave that cricketer time to develop. Mike Gatting comes quickly to mind. Mike Gatting was not an immediate success. Jacques Callis in South Africa, he was not an immediate success. And you have got to give people with that sort of talent. If you have, as a selector, think that this person has talent, you have got to go by your judgment and give that person a bit of time to develop and see if he really will come forward. But as we know, under today's pressure of selecting people immediately being successful, and even people looking at selectors and wanting to get rid of them if they think that they are not doing a very good job, it's a slightly different scenario now.
Thank you. So thank you, Stuart, and thank you, Mikey. Next question then from Stephen Boyle. Stephen.
Oh, hi, Mike. It's great to speak to you. Hi. After you retired, you owned a petrol station in Kingston for a while.
Yes. Yeah.
How did you end up transitioning from a petrol station owner to becoming a full-time broadcaster? And in the broadcasting role, not the petrol station role, what was the most difficult part for you to learn in terms of broadcasting? Thank you.
I'll start with the petrol station first of all, Stephen. I went into the petrol station business just before the Iraq War, the first when they went, and that was about 1998, somewhere around there. And it was before 90, it might have been 88, whenever it was anyway, sorry about the date. I went into the petrol station because I retired from cricket. I was looking for a business to go and do in Jamaica. And my friend who pretty much started Shell Shield in Jamaica, Howard Hamilton, was in charge of a Shell company in Jamaica and the Caribbean. I went to him and he suggested that, and I got the Shell station. I had that station for about 7 or 8 years. And then in 1995, when the West Indies toured England, I was asked by Sky to come up and work on that series in England. Well, while I was there, running the petrol station was always a full-time job. But while I was in England, things started to go a little bit wrong at the petrol station. You know, sometimes, as I say, I have the owner fattens the cow. If I have the owner, the cow dwindles away. And my mother went down there because I called home one day and asking for my mother, and I was told she's not there. No, my mother never learned to drive. Anywhere she went, she had to be taken. And her husband, my father, she was busy doing other stuff. So I was wondering why she wasn't at home. How come she got to the petrol station? Eventually, when I got hold of her, she told me that there was some problems at the petrol station. And because of that, she had to go down there. That is when I sold the petrol station. My mother was approaching 80 at that time. And I said, there's no way after my mother worked for so long trying to bring up a family that I was going to suffer her in a petrol station now trying to do my thing when I'm away doing commentary. So I sold the petrol station, and at that point I said, okay, commentary is going to be full time. Let me see what can happen with this commentary now and how far I can go with this. And then of course in 1998, I got the opportunity to sign on with Sky because the 95 tour was just a one-off, just West Indies touring. And in 98, when the BBC lost cricket and Channel 4 and Sky got more cricket, I signed a contract. Sky signed me on a long-term contract. And that is how I got into television commentary. And that's where I've been ever since. From 98 until now, I've been working with Sky. So that is the story with the petrol station and of course commentary. As far as the hardest thing to do with commentary, when I first started doing commentary, even before television, I was a very nervous person. I was thinking about the amount of people or the number of people that were actually listening to me, and if I slipped up, how many people would have heard the slip up and how embarrassing it would have been. And it took me quite a few years to calm down, to settle down, to relax, and to start thinking only about what was happening on the cricket field and trying to describe what was happening on the cricket field, trying to analyze what was happening on the cricket field and forget about how many people would hear and if I made a step up, what the consequences were. But it wasn't easy initially. But I worked with a lot of great commentators, Richard Beno in particular, Ian Chaplin in Australia, who helped me a lot. You know, I'll give you a story about Richard Beno. I went down here in 1991 to do commentary. And of course, it's my early days now on television. I was sitting beside Richard Beno in the Channel 9 commentary box. And of course, I said nothing. And unless Richard said something to me, I just sat there. I was dumbfounded. I was in awe, sitting beside Richard Beno. And Richard, at one point, when nothing much was happening on the field, he just had his mic on the sponge beside him. And he turned to me and he said, because he recognized and saw what was going on. I said, Mikey, if you want to talk about something, and even if it's not on the screen, that white button, press the white button, speak into your microphone and tell the director what you want to see so that you can talk about it. And when Richard said that to me, it just showed me that Richard thought I was competent enough to do something like that. And that gave me more confidence, and as time went on, the confidence grew, and of course, then you blossom in the job. But it wasn't easy initially.
Thank you. Mikey, I did ask you privately before we started, but I'll ask you again so you can get the same answer. Last year, you said that you were thinking of quitting Sky Sports, but I understand you may be continuing a bit longer. Can you talk about that, please?
Yes, last year was supposed to be my last year. That was the last of the long-term contract. Each contract that I signed with Sky was the first one 4 years, then three years each time after that. And last year was the last year. 2020 was the last year of that 3-year contract. But because of COVID and because of the way the summer went, Sky have always wanted me to continue. And I said to Brian Henderson, my boss, then I said, Hendo, okay, this is a bad year. I'll do one more year, 2021. So this year, 2021 is going to be, if everything goes according to plan, that is, this is going to be my last year working for Sky. I've been there since 1998. There's no commentator at Sky that has been there before me. So it's been a long time. And I believe that life has phases and phases, and you go through those phases. I think I've come to the end of my phase at Sky.
Okay. Well, we'll miss you when you've gone. Next question then from Ross Settles. Ross.
Hello, Mikey.
Hi, Ross.
To wind the clock back and take you out into the middle, which 2 or 3 batsmen did you find it most difficult to get out, who you thought offered you a serious challenge?
I think I could nominate about 5 of them. I'll go through by country. And, you know, Sunil Gavaskar in my early days, he was always a difficult batsman to get out unless the pitch was offering you quite a bit. My first tour, the 2 Chappells, Ian Chappell and Greg Chappell down in Australia. In England, not my early days in England, but the latter stages when I came up against Gooch and Goa, I found them to be formidable players. They were top class players as far as I'm concerned. There was one batsman in New Zealand that I rated highly, and I didn't play a lot against him. I played a bit. I even went and played some domestic cricket in New Zealand and played against him a little bit down there, Martin Crowe. I thought he was a high class player. I never played test cricket against Pakistan, but I played some one-day games against them, and there were some players there that I again rated highly. If I got them out, I would cherish those wickets. One was Zahir Abbas, Majid Khan, Javed Miandad, those 3 from Pakistan. I thought they were fantastic. They were fabulous. I shouldn't say I'm glad, but I think I was fortunate that I didn't play a lot of test cricket against them, especially in Pakistan, because those pitches were a little bit flat. But I came across some really top class players in my career. One of them that I have not mentioned, because when I played against him, he was past his best, but I still think whenever you got him out, you had to work hard to get him out because he would never give his wicket away, was Jeffrey Boycott. When I played against Jeffrey Boycott was like 40-41. There's no way anybody's going to tell me that at 40-41 you can be as good as you were in your 20s. Because I remember seeing him play against Gary Sobers and those guys. But then, even at that point of his career, Boycott would never give his wicket away. He knew that his strengths, he knew his weaknesses, and you'd have to get him out.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you, Mikey. And just to emphasize, this is a very international session today. We're now going to Belgium for Morley Pecker. Morley.
Thank you, James. Good evening, Mikey.
Hi, Morley.
Mikey, you'll be pleased to hear the sun is shining in Brussels today for the first time for some time. Now, Mikey, it's 17 years since you and I enjoyed the wonderful cruise that was arranged, the Silver Seas cruise in the Caribbean.
Yes.
And we watched some wonderful cricket, and there were some wonderful people around, Richie Benaud and many others. Now in Antigua, we watched Brian Lara get something like 400 runs.
Almost, not quite.
Indeed. Now, Mikey, I hope you'll probably agree with me that the pitch was fairly flat on that occasion.
Yeah,
that is the reason for my question to you. We've recently had England playing in India. There have been tours around different countries. What is your view on the different pitches that are produced by groundsmen in different countries when touring teams go there? Do you think it's absolutely fair that the pitches in one country are so different from those in another? Would you like to see them a little bit closer together, or are you happy with the current situation?
Molly, I don't think you can have standardized pitches. I think when you go to different countries, all the different countries have different types of soil, and of course you're gonna get different lengths of grass covering on different pitches. I know exactly what you're referring to though. You're talking about the doctoring of pitches. I am not afraid to use that word, Molly, and I am totally against doctoring of pitches. I think the ICC should punish countries who prepare underprepared pitches that are only suitable for certain aspects of the game. But as we know, the ICC are a weak organization. When you go to India, you can get absolutely brilliant pitches. And of course, you can get pitches that deteriorate in no time at all. Yep. That means it is all about how the pitches are prepared. When you come to the Caribbean, years ago, each island that you went to, you knew the pitch that you were getting because of different types of soil in the various islands. When you go to Guyana, it has rained so much in Guyana. It had rained so much in Guyana in my career, but I was always glad for the rain in Guyana. You couldn't get people out on those pitches in Guyana at border. The amount of runs and centuries scored at border far outweigh the number of 5-wicket hauls. You go to Trinidad, you know the Trinidad pitch is going to be uneven. I got John Wright out to the bounds at LBW once. So you know exactly what you're getting. But in certain countries, the pitches are prepared the way they want to prepare them. And I have no problem with preparing a pitch to suit what you think is your strength. But if the pitch is underprepared, if the pitch is substandard, you should pay a penalty for that.
Yes. Yes, Mikey, I entirely agree with you. But how can that be arranged? How can we persuade the various countries who do take part in world cricket that that is something that must happen? And I have to be quite blunt and say, India, of course, have so much control over cricket at the moment. And how can we persuade the Indian cricket authorities that it is necessary to produce better pitches for the people who come to play and watch cricket in their country?
The solution to that is what I've been saying for donkey's years. The ICC needs to have some teeth. And irrespective of who the president is or who is a strong person at the ICC, it must be independent so that they can have teeth against any and everyone. there's always going to be some argument being put forward. Oh, when such and such was in charge, they did this. When such and such was in charge, they did that. No, we are in charge, we will do that. I don't believe that is the way the world should be. We come back to the same problem that we are seeing all over the world. You know, you do not sink yourself to depths that other people sunk to. You try and lift yourself to lift everything. There's a famous saying that someone said, I don't like to get too political, so I won't be calling any names, but someone said once recently in the United States, when they go low, we go high. And that should be the attitude of all people. Don't go down, always go up.
When they go low, they go high.
But unfortunately, we don't see that all the while.
Thank you, Mikey. Have we got time for another couple of questions? You're right. We've been going for an hour. You're right for another 2 questions, Mikey?
Let me tell you something. I just saw my old mate Stan Martinson come up on the screen. There's no way I'm going to leave without speaking to Stan.
Okay. We were going to bring Stan in next. Stan, you're identified as Olex 3316, but you told us who you were in the chat. So Stan, please go ahead.
Yeah, it's wonderful to listen to Mikey. He's a true gentleman, and our playing days with Derbyshire was absolutely sensational. Me coming from the Danish background, and have the opportunity to open the bowling with Mikey for 5-6 years with Derbyshire. Absolutely sensational. I got a lot of wickets because of Mikey, and the friendship has been absolutely sensational. But I'd like to ask just one question. I got a number of questions. It's been mentioned earlier that every time, Mikey, when we played Yorkshire, and you mentioned Sir Geoffrey, it always looked like that you were running in and bowling a yard or two quicker. Was that simply because of Sir Geoffrey, or was it just because we were playing against Yorkshire in general?
It was because of Sir Geoffrey, Stan. As you know, Sir Geoffrey was always a difficult customer. And when I say because of Sir Geoffrey, I don't want people to think this is because I didn't like him or anything like that. But he was a competitor. He was a great batsman that when you know you're coming up against people like that, if you get them early, that sends shivers through the rest of the team. He's at the top of the order. If you get rid of Geoffrey Boycott early, Yorkshire will have shivers. Because if you blow him out of the way, the rest of them will say, I am not as good as Geoffrey Boycott. So how am I going to last if Geoffrey Boycott couldn't last? So that is the sort of thing that you have got to do. Attack the leader, attack the head, attack the best batsman in the team and try and blow him out of the way quickly. And before you disappear, Stan, let us just tell people how great this game cricket is. So that someone like you from Denmark and me from little Jamaica, 1-point-something million people, could have such a great friendship over such a long period of time. No, that is a great thing about this game cricket. You can make friends all over the world and it lasts. And Stan, it has always been great to be your friend. Every time you make that trip to the UK and I'm there, it's always good to catch up.
Mikey, you are a true hero and a true gentleman. And I just appreciate that I've had the opportunity to play alongside you, and our friendship is getting stronger and stronger. And you have just been absolutely sensational. And as I'm repeating myself, playing alongside you, going out, having various Chinese curries and whatever, you are a true gentleman, and you are one in a trillion, and you are a great person and an honest gentleman, and yeah, you're sensational.
Don't tell them about the driving, Stan. Don't mention the driving. Thank you, Stan.
All right, yeah, let's have the driving.
No.
I think you've got to mention the driving now, Stan.
Is there any police listening in here? The short version was the Mikey. We're going to play a Sunday league against Glamorgan, and I think Mikey was gambling on the horses, and he was running about an hour and a half late, and he was going to pick me up outside Derby, and And he said, Stan, you're going to fasten your seat belts and you're going to look through the sunroof if there's any police choppers, because we are running very late. And Mikey was driving 300 miles an hour. And outside the Burton, you had blue lights flashing, police helicopters flying almost over us, and roadblocks. And we got stopped, of course. And this big sergeant came up alongside the Mr. T's car with Michael holding written all over his car. And he said, what's the hurry and what's your name? Can you please step into my car? We need to have a serious discussion. And after 10, 15 minutes, Michael came out with a big smile and he said, I have to turn up in court, but I'm back in Jamaica in a fortnight, so it doesn't really matter. So we moved on and we played the Sunday League against Glamorgan. So fantastic. But I was definitely shitting my trousers the way Michael was driving, but we got there in one piece.
Every trip we got there, Stan, every trip.
Well, Stan, thank you so much for coming along, and I think that's an excellent place to finish. We still have a number of other people who want to ask questions. We've been going for an hour and 5 minutes now, so I think we're going to need to let Mikey end there. Thanks so much, Mikey, for an absolutely brilliant end to our 2021 lockdown series. Thanks also to all of you who have asked the questions and all who have been able to join us tonight. Thanks also to Chris English for arranging today's Q&A. Really appreciate it. We're going to ask everybody to give Mikey a round of applause in a minute, so you can unmute yourself. But in the meantime, I wish everyone a safe and enjoyable summer. I hope to see many of you next week at Lord's for the first test against New Zealand, where it looks as if the weather is going to be kind to us at last. So thanks, Mikey. Thanks to Chris. Stay safe and well. Goodbye, everybody. Let's give Mikey a good round of applause.
Thank you, Mikey.
Thank you very much indeed.
Mikey. Thank you so much.
All the very best to you.